Drive.
I call the Township of Aleppo workshop meeting of February 14th, 2022 to order at 7 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
President Jones.
Present.
Vice President Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Darrow.
Present.
Commissioner Richard.
Present.
Solicitor Stone.
Here.
Manager Patterson. Here.
This meeting, like all others, will be recorded, uploaded to YouTube, and available to anybody, anytime, anywhere.
I motion to approve the January 17th, 2022 legislative meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Old business, weight limit road bonding ordinance. Gwen.
It's basically on here to let you know that it has been advertised for adoption at next week's legislative meeting. You have the ordinance in your packet tonight to review, but it's been advertised, so you would vote on it next week.
Assume you've reviewed it and it's acceptable to you, Harlan.
I reviewed it many times.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams, will you be in attendance next week?
I will.
Good. Request for parking regulations in the Swickley Heights Manor. Gwen, could you address that?
We were,
And it's a little bit broader than that.
it is. We received a letter from the Manor Homes Association, I believe the president, and this is what we had talked about in meetings a few times because we had heard about this informally as a request, but they are requesting that the township put some parking restrictions on the Swickley Heights Drive, the one lane in, one lane out road, and on Rockledge Drive. They are proposing, or they are requesting that there be no parking on the road on Swickley Heights Drive, and that there be parking only on one side of the road on Rockledge Drive. They are also requesting control over the median or the islands be given to the Manor Board. They're not, it does not appear that they're requesting ownership of those islands, but they're requesting that the Manor Board be in charge of what happens on those islands. And for your information, historically, we do not cut the grass, we do not do leaf cleanup or anything. We don't really do anything on those islands, and anytime anybody from the Manor has asked or said, hey, what about this? The only thing we do there is we do assist in taking down trees when they're dead. The Manor Landscape Committee marks them if they're dead, and then our crews will go over, so a lot of times working with Bob to cut down the dead trees. But we don't, traditionally, the township has not had an opinion on what happens on the islands.
And you have an historic opinion about this?
That we don't do anything on the islands, and that a lot of times if it comes to us, like somebody calls and asks us, we just say, we don't do anything on the island, so, you know, ask the Manor. So it's,
So did the developer or anyone else have that control over those islands?
the township does because they're in the roadway and we own the road. So we own the islands, you know, as part of the laid out roadway.
Or we have a right of way on the road.
I think you own the road, Dan.
Okay.
It is within the right of way, but I think you own the road itself.
And what I was getting to is historically from time to time, we find ourselves kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And we've taken a position, like when somebody came and asked about a flag, when somebody came and asked about this and that, we've always said that we would defer to the opinion of the Manor. Because
Yes.
it's, so, Solicitor Stone, when they're asking for control, is there an easy legal way to give them the right to make
Sure.
decisions?
Sure, so what I was thinking in terms of, since this came up before, is you could, first of all, I think as the owner of the road, you want to maintain control.
Yes.
And for liability reasons and for all other reasons, you don't want to give up your interest in the road. But I think what you can do is allow them under some understanding or maybe some letter agreement of some short form, extend to them the right to conduct certain activities on the islands under either some type of possibly an easement for maintenance or a license or something like that that would extend to them a limited right to do certain things on the island with your permission.
Can they be given authorization to enforce conditions? What can occur on the islands?
Well, no, you can put conditions on what rights they have
Okay.
to conduct activities on there. But ultimately, that control goes with the ultimate control goes with the ownership, subject to whatever rights you either lease out or that you give out by way of easement.
So, can I ask a question? So
Sure.
we have legal ways where you could have an agreement, or could it be even as simple as, a letter confirming our understanding, a letter from the township, or, so, that would be the question.
Yeah.
My question is,
So you
formal
can,
agreement, or you can just say, hey, it's our policy that,
so if you actually, probably the most formal type of arrangement would be where you actually grant them an easement, and then that easement would be recorded, and then that would be probably the most formal type of arrangement. The less formal would be a license of some sort, and the license could be recorded or not recorded, but it could also be condensed, I think, into a letter of understanding or something of that nature, where you give them a license to conduct maintenance, or you give them a license to do whatever we decide the scope is. You give them that license, and I think that could be done in a letter agreement.
So transitioning to the larger subject, one of the issues has been people parking on the islands.
Parking is addressed in Article 7 of the zoning code. And it begins by saying, off-street vehicular parking facilities shall be provided in accordance with the following standards. Number 1, off-street parking may be located in any required front, side, or rear yard, but not within the existing right-of-way.
So, to the extent that's a problem, is that what you're saying, that people are parking?
Well, like on Rockledge, people are parking on both sides of the road,
And that blocks the access?
unless you're walking.
It makes it dangerous because you're swerving in and out.
So, I think there was always a question about off-street parking in the manor. And I think the problem, as I remember, was, didn't the police regard the streets in the manor as being privately held?
some are privately held. The township owns Sewickley Heights Drive and the roads in the Ridge. But all the side streets that come off of Sewickley Heights Drive are privately held by the manor.
So Commissioner Dara is talking about the Ridge, correct?
Rockledge is in the Ridge, and Sewickley Heights Drive is in the manor. And it's all, when I speak, the manor is kind of the whole group that.
Section 705 says parking requirements for single-family, two-family, and townhouse dwellings will be met by providing the required space in an enclosed garage or in a private driveway within a required yard on the lot.
Okay, but there's two issues there. One is, and again, I'm just thinking back to when this all began. And correct me if I'm misstating something, because it's not perfect. Number one, I think that what was done in the manor, I don't know about the Ridge, but the first part of the manor predated that particular zoning ordinance by many, many years. So everything that got done back in 1970s or whenever the first development took place predated those requirements, and there's probably grandfathered. So now, that doesn't mean you can't,
There's no delineated parking spaces within the right-of-way in the manor. They're
right.
all off the right-of-way.
So what you could do, I mean, if you really want to solve that problem, short of accepting the private streets, you could pass an ordinance dealing with off-street parking and, I mean, you can regulate, one side of the street parking versus both sides of the street. And then what you need though is a traffic study, and you need to be able to post, because one of the requirements under the vehicle code is if you're gonna do that, to cite and to ticket people, you have to put up a sign that says no parking, and then you want to put a yellow line.
If you had parking in the right-of-way on the manor roads, you wouldn't be able to have two-way vehicular traffic on that road. The roads aren't wide enough.
Right.
To allow for parking on both sides of the street.
To allow for parking on one side of the street and have two cars coming from each other in opposite directions.
So you can't afford, given the width, you
I
can't.
can't have three car widths across the road.
Okay, so you can't have on-street parking on either side.
Right.
No.
Right. So,
But the manor, for the most part, accommodates that with their visitor parking spaces, which are off the right-of-way, immediately adjacent to it, but
the other way to regulate that might be, and I've seen this done, I have to look into it, but resident-only parking?
they have that. They have guest-only parking. The parking spaces that are right off the roadway are guest-only parking. Resident parking is supposed to be in your driveway or in your garage.
I don't believe there are any properties over there that don't have a driveway.
Right.
So there's no, there are no properties over there that only have street parking. Every home over there
Has a driveway.
Has a driveway.
So who are the,
Having that's required by the zoning code.
so who are the violators? The owners, the residents?
Yeah, homeowners with too many cars.
People that have three cars and a one or two car garage are parking in the guest-only spaces, leaving no space for the guests to park.
And/or on Rockledge, parking on one side of the road or both sides of the road.
So this isn't just a legal problem, this is a logistical and
It's an enforcement problem.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what type of additional regulations you can pass that will solve this problem. Because you already have,
You'd have to amend the zoning code.
well, we're in the process of doing that.
I know, but I just read from the new version of the zoning code.
Oh,
Interesting reading, and it keeps you up at night.
Well, I asked,
well, Gwen and I have been reading it for a year, so.
at the last meeting or so, I asked the chief if they had any background information that we could use. He said yes, especially in regard to enforcement. What do we need to do to allow him to enforce? And I think he even said in some cases, even without an ordinance, the example of parking on the islands, it can be an obstruction of view.
Yeah, they can do that.
There are some other ways that it
They
can be
can do
handled.
that.
Then in terms of the traffic study, Mr. Gilberti was here from HRG, and he said they also have expertise. So it almost sounds to me like we have to do some homework.
Yeah, so the chief is right. There are some regulations under the state vehicle code which allow them to remove vehicles that have been parked on the public street or the public right of way for more than 24 and sometimes 48 hours. They can actually remove them. So but that's under the state law. But yeah, there's no reason why the chief can't enforce the vehicle code restrictions on parking in the right of way.
And Commissioner Dara, the Rockledge one clearly you can't have 3 cars.
No.
Have you thought about any solution that would allow some people with more cars in their driveway?
We could try to do something like they have up in the manor, use the tennis courts as a parking lot.
I think
I'm being facetious, of course.
there's fundamentally something very wrong, though, if they're using tennis courts as a parking lot, or if there's not, or just the increase of cars is this problem that we can't fix, people having more cars than, that's,
Right.
it's not fixable from our end. Increasing guest pads, increasing those more, doubling on or making more pads for residents to park their excess vehicles. Maybe they're tagged and they get a spot in the resident-only zone for extra vehicles. I mean,
You could look at, on Rockledge, as you go across Swickley Heights Drive and go around that bend, you have that extra area, it's like a circle, you could probably put some parking spaces in there.
True.
Expressly delineate them as parking spaces.
So in our stakeholder meeting, will someone from the manor be there, from the homeowners association?
I didn't expressly invite them. I mean, you could, because it's an existing PRD. The zoning district is an existing PRD, and it's not proposed to, PRD is no longer proposed to be in this version of the zoning ordinance. So
Right.
they're not really covered in this one. The PRD zoning district is covered in they'd be grandfathered under the old zoning ordinance.
But I think because this might involve zoning or ordinances, why not invite them?
Sure.
Yeah, and this is something that can at least be, maybe they have a solution.
Well, it seems to me they could, number one, actually enforce their visitor-only parking, or create a system where you have, if you're a resident and you need that parking space, get a permit from the homeowners association up there with a tag that lets you be in a certain spot, that's your designated off-street parking.
So if you're suggesting that that's something we might want to think about incorporating in the zoning ordinance,
I don't know.
we might be able to do
I
that.
think you can do it with the zoning ordinance, because you're gonna comply with the zoning ordinance. You're
Well,
just
that's-
gonna change the manor's guest policy.
Well, but what you could do is you could I think you could insert some language, we'd have to talk to Laura, that said, that was specific to the PRD. So for parking in the PRD, you have to go through these additional steps, which is one, get a permit for anything over,
Well, parking not, other than as specified in the zoning code, would require a permit.
but I mean, I think that's
The zoning
something.
code currently says if you're a townhouse in the manor, you either have to park in your garage or on your private driveway.
And if PRD is no longer an allowable zoning district.
Right.
Can you put something in the new zoning ordinance that regulates
Well,
designation?
we'd have to take it up with Laura.
Yeah,
But I wouldn't, but one, it's an enforcement issue, and that's something you can take up with the homeowners association, because it's also an enforcement issue for the police, because they do have some power under the state law to take vehicles out of the public street and out of the right of way. So those are enforcement things. As far as the zoning ordinance itself, I'm kind of at a loss. I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Dare. I don't know that there's a problem with the ordinance, it's the enforcement.
I think it's an enforcement issue.
So I think inviting them is a good idea for both the islands. My first comment was, I don't think I could restate clearly the problem yet, the precise problem.
I'm happy to invite them, I'm not, is it correct to invite them because we're not changing PRD regulations at all?
Yeah, I mean, you can invite
Yeah,
anybody you
invite
want. I
anybody,
mean, you
but
can-
I don't know that it would be addressed through the zoning ordinance yet, but I'm
Well, we
happy
could
to
have,
invite them.
a separate meeting.
I'm happy to invite them.
Yeah, you could have a separate meeting with the HOA.
Have a meeting with Tim.
Okay,
Would you like me to put some dates out for that?
sure.
Okay, would that be a committee meeting, or would you be inviting them to a board meeting?
I think committee.
So that's 2 commissioners then, okay.
Okay. Glass recycling.
I spoke to Patrick, the executive director of COG, after our meeting, because there were a bunch of questions that came through. Some basic questions: who gets the glass? Cap Glass is the vendor that everyone's using, is willing to accept the glass. Who gets the profit? Cap Glass. They're the ones who are coming and taking the glass, so it would be having the glass recycling bin would be the municipalities participating, and then I think it's Michael Brothers Hauling's the intermediary who owns the bins and then delivers them to Cap Glass. The last bin that we had it here for a week, and it was, I think, I don't have that in front of me, George, I emailed it to you, but I think it was
2 tons plus, it was like $50.
$50. So it's not a ton of revenue that, the municipality is not capturing by having this, here being the host. Is there an economic benefit versus just a feel-good measure? There is an aspirational aspect to all recycling, as we know, and some of it is feel good and keep it out of the landfill, and some of it is it doesn't hurt to do certain things a certain way and try to recapture some of it. The biggest benefit to the host site would be the ease for our residents to have a close place to use it. That's the benefit. There's not a monetary benefit to the host site. He has not talked to PRC about if they do any lobbying for having a bottle deposit fee, but he said if that's something that COG would be happy to do it. He feels that that's something where if municipalities would say, we would like the COG to investigate that, he'd like a letter just saying, please act on this, but he's open to that. And he's not approached Giant Eagle or other commercial businesses about having a location. If that were to be the case, it would not be COG related at all. COG is not interested in getting involved in dealing with the commercial sites. That would be maybe an advocacy program where he would, approach on behalf of the municipality saying, hey, set one up at Giant Eagle, but COG is not interested in trying to be a funding intermediary between that. The cost of the breakdown, or the cost breakdown that we got last month, relies on everybody participating. So what we talked about was the COG has a recycling fund that is based on some of the commercial tonnage that we get, so they have a fund. And they're going to go ahead and support the first location, the pilot location of this glass bin. We were calling it permanent, like semi-permanent location, for a couple of months to see its use. So the COG will support the couple pulls a month and pay for that, just to see if people really are going and driving a couple towns over and using it. Then they'll start billing the municipalities, and it's an average of 60 to 70 a month-ish. Can't hold them to that number, but that's kind of depending on the number of pulls is how much it will cost. And then if there's not enough participation, so I said, what if 5 communities are really in for it and we're ready to pay, but other ones are not? And he said, it's basically a self-funded thing. So if there's not enough participation, the program ends. He's not that if not enough municipalities are willing to participate in the cost share, then at some point we say, okay, this didn't work. It was a great idea, but it didn't work.
Has there been any data collected on the number of cars that came to the dumpster?
Not without like video evidence of that, because it's not regulated, so we don't have anybody
No,
out there with a clicker.
I don't have an easy way to do that.
Yeah. And there's no thought of checking IDs, or do you live in the COG area, do you live in, they're not
Yeah.
getting that deep into it. They're just trying to provide something that residents in a lot of communities have said they are interested in, and this is a way to try it as a pilot program and see. We are read in the Herald that Sewickley is probably going to offer to be a site, and Patrick is saying this can be self-funded, it can grow. So we could have a site, it could go great, and everybody thinks it works smoothly, and that's great, and so we set up a second site. So he has not, as my talking to him on the 9th, did not have any official letters saying, please pick me, because that's the process, is he needs a letter from municipality saying, I'm interested, here's why you should pick us as the site. And I said, I wasn't sure, I couldn't promise a letter was coming from Aleppo yet, I wasn't sure.
Is Sustainable Sewickley paralleling this effort?
I do not know how they tie into this, if they do. I don't know if they've participated in it. This is a COG program right now that he's willing, the COG board is willing to work with this on this funding scale with these vendors and then see how it goes.
Is there a central location in regard to miles driven to?
Be within the COG?
Right.
Kind of, we are central-ish because it goes from Bellevue to, Leedsdale. No, Bell Acres, all the way to Bell Acres. So it's, this middle section here, Sewickley, Aleppo, Osborne's kind of the middle of it in different directions. I mean, ideally, they want to try to find one at each end of the COG, so on the Sewickley Edgeworth end of it, and then on the, Avalon side perhaps, so that residents can kind of split the distance of where they have to go, because, the diehards will drive to Bellevue to drop it off. And regular, people who are casual recyclers won't, they'll just continue to throw it away. So I think he would like to have a couple different locations and have this just be a smooth, it's just a program that we have, so.
Yeah, my original questions were, the bottle deposit bill clearly allows for the most glass recycling. That's kind of nationwide. I know that's not an easy thing to do. And then the central location is also important in my mind, because if you're driving 100 miles with 2 glass bottles, you're kind of offsetting the benefit. So those are my 2 issues. I mean, glass is clearly, it's more than likely the best material to recycle. It's easy, it has a good use. It's never going to make money for anybody. But a central location that limits the number of miles, and then, to me, the best solution is to have the bottles go back to where they came from. That's the bottle bill. That's a long-term event. Would you contact Sustainable Sewickley and see if they're running a parallel effort?
Sure, meaning are they also trying to set up a site?
I think they are, and I think that they might be better suited to approach some of the commercial property. Don't know.
Also, Gwen, I think I had raised this before too, which is you might want to check with the insurance because of the additional liability associated with having a.
Having people come onto our property lot.
Right.
Yeah, I have not done that yet
Okay.
because, as of last time, we were not even sure that the board wanted to offer us as a host site yet. I didn't know if you wanted to offer as a host site yet, and again, we would have to talk a few more logistics, or if you wanted to wait and see if Sewickley went for it and see if people, and then maybe we could be a secondary site, so.
Well, I think getting the info from the insurance is fine.
Okay, sure.
Anyone else have any comments?
No, I agree. I haven't heard anything compelling to say, yes, sign us up. I haven't heard anything that says, no, we're out.
No.
I don't.
I'd be inclined to support a test period, that's
Yeah.
cost covered by the COG, and make our decision once we see how that works out.
So, okay, so I guess I have a couple questions. Do you want to then offer our site as a test period? Or do you want to let Sewickley or somebody else offer it as a test period first? If we offer it as a test period and it's really successful, it would be hard for us to say, well, that went really well, but we quit. So, and then so there's that component of the location. Then there's also are we willing to participate in the funding? And for $60 a month, we can afford that in the budget. It's your call, but it's certainly money that we can afford in the budget to help fund the program itself.
Have we determined an appropriate location here? And part of the reason I asked about the traffic, I don't think we're talking about a lot of cars, but how many cars are we talking about?
Mhm.
And
It was, Patty,
And
it was
then-
fairly steady when we had the bin out in the summer. It wasn't, there was never a line of cars waiting to get in, but it was, we stopped looking up when the cars, because you look up when a car pulls in, like, oh, look, there's somebody using it, and then we just quit looking. We have the slight issue of the Amazon van traffic that backs up
Mhm.
Yeah.
on North Drive and Deer Run at times, and so, you know, we could end up with a little bit more of a traffic jam sometimes.
yeah, I don't know.
The
And
only,
I think that then relates to the liability issue.
the only site that would be kind of possible is in our municipal parking lot. Out, you know, along the road there where people would have to come in, park, use the spots, drop it off, and then go back out. We don't want it in the public works. It's a one-lane driveway, we don't want to put it over there. We don't want people over on that side. So it would permanently give up 2 parking spaces in our parking lot, which most days of the year does not matter. So. I will check with insurance and check with the Stanley Weekly about whether they're approaching the commercial groups for that. And revisit? Is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Nancy Drive cat complaint.
The old answer.
The old kitty cats.
So I spoke to the property owner for a long time. And
And they are no longer on the property.
they never have lived there.
Okay,
The new property owners inherited the home and have not lived there, but have been involved in taking care of and trying to get rid of the cat population. They used to care for the woman who owned that house, so they've been involved for years. And she said that she has done a lot of the trap, neuter, and return herself, has trapped a lot of things. She does go and feed them every day because if not, then they may stray into people's garbage and things like that. So she feels that by feeding them on the location, it kind of contains them more than having them just spread out and roam the neighborhood. She said there are a lot fewer cats now than there were in the past. That in the past the population was very large, but that she has gotten at least 15 of them to be, if you see an ear tip, it means
Clip.
they've been spayed and returned. And she does trap them in the summer. She doesn't have the ability to trap right now and in all weather, but she does come down a lot to feed them. She really does want them out of there. She reiterated that a lot, would love any help that we could suggest or provide in ways to get them homed safely. Her husband knows people who she's trying to find a farm that wants barn cats and trying to relocate them that way. She thinks there's about 5 that need to be fixed. She's taken kittens out the past 3 summers. She has a lot of the neighbors over there she gave me some names of neighbors over there to contact to verify her efforts and things like that, and that they feel that some of those neighbors perhaps feel that the numbers are reduced. She's even taken classes at the Humane Society to learn how to deal
Wow.
with this population, and she would allow another group I asked, it's your property, would you allow another community group or citizens group to come in and do the trap, neuter, and return program? She said absolutely, she would accept any help that she could get. I also contacted Save Our Strays in Avalon, and they don't do any trapping, they're more of an education organization. She gave a few suggestions about how to physically coax them into cages and how to set it up to do that. Feed them on a schedule. She said this woman at this group said that the neighbors have to be involved for it to be successful, that colonies will stabilize once all are trapped, neutered, and returned, then they stabilize, but I forget where, somewhere in here in some stat that's, if you have 3 cats or something at the end of the summer, you'll have 25 or something if they're not fixed, so.
She said she feels it's reduced. Did she give a number?
She said that she took 20 kittens out last summer. She thinks there are about 15 spayed and neutered cats and probably 5 that are not fixed. So she was saying that there used to be a lot more than that.
That-
So that
than the
number,
20.
that number comports with the complaint letter that we got. But she's saying that in years past, there were a lot more than that, but she has pulled out kittens and found homes for them and worked with some of the other agencies. So.
Did she have any idea as to the neighbors that are most impacted by this, that would complain?
I think she knows who all their neighbors are, all the property neighbors are up there.
Can she think of any way to help make them happier?
I mean, she said she's trying. She's spoken with every neighbor up there.
Okay.
And has, longer standing relationship, even though she hasn't lived there herself.
So I liked her request for help.
Mhm.
I think that help with trapping is probably not in our game. Personally, I would accept I think we could offer some money to help her legitimately. In other words,
Probably.
if there's only 5 left to be trapped, neutered, and returned, that's $300, roughly, I think.
Sure.
And do we have any legal obligation in this matter?
No, but I think to the extent that they represent a nuisance and a health and safety hazard to the community, you can take steps, and she can take steps to abate that nuisance, and I think you can support that effort. I think it's a legitimate use of your government power.
So if somebody would like to suggest that, I think I'd be very receptive. But if nobody...
But that doesn't involve us in the trapping process, correct?
Just-
We're not,
just
if
the financial
somebody were
assistance.
to, she
Oh,
still
the-
needs help, somebody to trap them.
She's
that-
helping us with a nuisance. The solicitor just said that we could legitimately spend, it wouldn't be a lot of money, but if other commissioners agree with that we should help in some way, if somebody wanted to throw out an offer of assistance.
Well, let's put it this way. Certainly, you have the authority and the power to control a health hazard or a potential nuisance in your community. You could hire a contractor for $500 or anything under, really anything under $19,000 or $10,000 to do it on a contract basis. So if she's going to do it herself, and she's going to submit it to you, it's under all the bidding and under all the contract requirements, I don't see a problem with it. You might want, on your motion, you might want to limit, or you might want to
Yeah.
talk about some limit on how much you're willing to
Do
do.
any other commissioners have a thought here?
No, I promised to speak with Eric, but he and I have passed on dark a couple of times. I will get to him. And the biggest help that we have had in the past was we got the residents over there to stop feeding them. And that was pretty effective once we, sat down and told them what the ramifications were. That at that time, there was about 40 cats over there.
Commissioner Richard, any thoughts?
No, still soaking it in. I have a hard time even thinking of 20 cats. I can't
Yeah.
imagine 40.
I think we should do something. I really don't have a good idea of what that should be. It's something that's effective.
Well, my thought was a couple $100
Yeah.
reimbursed upon receipt of a bill. I mean, we'd have to know the details, but I believe she's taking them to a vet. My research shows that it's $50 or $60 per cat. If there's 5 cats, we offer half, as a start. But
I think her issue, one of the things she also expressed is she has not been able to catch these cats. So,
well, but if she does catch them, we could at least show our appreciation for her efforts by contributing a little bit of money upon receipt of an invoice from a vet.
The only thing I did was try to figure out if the rumor was right, there was about 40 cats. And I wouldn't question that. I see them on the properties. They're hunting mice and so on and so forth. They're spotlessly well taken care of. and I haven't seen anything like that, but if the population is now down to 5, how'd they do that?
Did she have any knowledge of people dropping cats off?
She did. She found one, I think, I don't remember mentioned this, but she was able to track one and they scanned it for a chip and it was from Aleppo, and she said the cat did not cross the bridge on its own.
Right.
Somebody came and dropped the cat off in the site because they knew it was a
I had a
site.
cat that swam.
There you go. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can either,
Why don't we say we would reimburse her 50% of her costs up to $300?
is there a second to that?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Could we limit that to perhaps a site or something, or is that gonna be like open to anyone in the township? That reimbursement of cat spaying expenses, or are we
No,
talking about
I think to her.
this
Yeah,
property?
This is explicit.
To this property, okay, can we, let's
And
make
it's
a
a-
motion that makes that clear. Can you maybe craft that for us?
Mhm, yes.
Or Harlan? Like, lay it
I think
out?
it should be a motion to authorize the expenditure of, Commissioner Darrow, what did you say?
50% of her cost, trap and neuterize,
Not to exceed 300.
not to exceed 300.
In order to abate the nuisance at the property identified as whatever.
Put the address in.
111.
Right.
Is there any issue with her then becoming a contractor to the township? I mean, are we?
No, I'm saying I think this,
Okay.
it's de minimis.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I think it's a good idea. New business.
My challenge has changed. I'll clue in Eric
Good.
that we're taking steps in that direction.
And if he knows we've offered some help, maybe he'll give some
Maybe, I
help.
was going to suggest that maybe they open their office for another 300 or something.
When the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks,
I'm gonna say that I didn't do a lot of digging into it. It was something that you communicated with, this guy. It's a lobbying group for not having big trucks.
this is a lobbying group that's trying to prevent bigger trucks asking for letters of support.
Clearly, the form letter that they gave us indicates they have no idea of who owns the local roads and who owns the larger roads that the trucks actually use.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it didn't look very professional to me, and I'm not sure how it applies to Aleppo Township.
To me, I get these requests a lot, a
Right.
lot of lobbying requests. So this one didn't appear to be specifically targeted for our area.
I think no interest.
Agree,
You agree?
agree.
Okay, any other new business? Mr. Solicitor, anything for us?
No, nothing that we haven't discussed.
Dave, anybody online?
No questions.
Therefore, we are adjourned.